Here's a tutorial analyzing and diagramming this argument. I went ahead and numbered the claims in the passage, and I'll explain why I numbered them the way I did as I go through it. As we learn to analyze an argument, our first step is to identify the conclusion and number it number one. This can take some effort since it requires interpreting the point the author is trying to persuade us about. So when reading passages looking for a conclusion, you're asking what claim is everything else in the passage trying to support? In this claim, the conclusion is the sentence, we should reject such efforts to ban CRT if they should arise in the Roseville School District. That's the claim that the other statements are working to justify. So I've highlighted it in yellow here and numbered it claim number one, since that's the overall conclusion of the argument. And so I will place that number down here at the bottom of the diagram. The next thing to notice is that the arguer is conveniently organizing the reasons with first and second. That indicates that we've got two main reasons that intend to support the conclusion. But you'll also notice that each of these reasons has multiple claims in them. That tells us that each reason here is going to be a sub-argument itself. So we're going to take the skills that we know on how to analyze arguments, and we're going to look at the sub-arguments and use those same skills. The first sub-argument follows the first here, is highlighted in green, just to kind of make it convenient to keep track of. So what we need to ask here is what's going on? And there's really three claims in this long sentence, and it is a single sentence. Remember, the way language works is that single sentences can include multiple claims, and each of those claims may serve a distinct logical role as either a reason, a conclusion, or support for another reason. So let's take a look at claims 2, 3, and 4 here and see what's going on. Claim 2 reports what the critics of critical race theory say about it, specifically that critical race theory teaches that all white people are oppressors and all black people are hopelessly oppressed. And then claim 3 asserts that this criticism in 2 is false, that the critics are wrong about CRT. And claim 4 gives support for that assertion that nowhere in the CRT curriculum does it teach that all white people are oppressors and that all black people are hopelessly oppressed. So these three claims are logically connected. So let's diagram what that structure looks like. Critics claim that CRT teaches that all white people are oppressors and all black people are hopelessly oppressed. But then 4 says that's a false claim. Nowhere in the curriculum does it say that. So those two claims are linked to support claim 3, which says the critics are wrong about the CRT curriculum, which supports the overall conclusion. So these three claims, 2, 4, and 3, are logically connected. 3 is the intermediate conclusion. It says the critics are wrong about CRT. And we can test this using the because test. So the critics are wrong about CRT, that's claim 3, because they claim it teaches something and that curriculum doesn't actually include what they say it does. So that is the structure of that sub-argument supporting the overall conclusion that we should reject efforts to ban CRT if they should arise in the Roseville School District. This is a good point to briefly discuss the value of doing this type of analysis in a critical thinking class. Diagramming arguments is valuable, not as a skill in itself, but because it gives us some very sharp skills in being able to separate out all the individual claims that are used to try to convince us of the conclusion, that the conclusion ought to be accepted as true. But sometimes it's hard to key in on the exact role each claim plays. So when arguments are made orally or even in writing, these roles can be hidden in complex phrasing or buried in emotionally charged rhetoric. Diagramming helps us cut through all that, and it helps us see the structure clearly, what supports what and what depends on what, and whether the overall structure actually holds up and gives us good reasons for the conclusion. In this particular sub-argument, it relies on some facts, namely what the curriculum of CRT entails. So analyzing this argument helps reveal that very clearly. Now let's take a look at the second sub-argument. I've highlighted it in blue, and this is a separate set of claims because it introduces a whole new set of reasons for why we should reject efforts to ban CRT. Claim 5 gives us a reason, namely that we should reject efforts to ban CRT because schools should acknowledge rather than ban awareness about how our country's racist history continues to impact the present. And why should we acknowledge that? Well, because Claim 6 says we should strive to dismantle racism wherever and whenever it occurs. So what we've got here is a chain argument. And that chain works from 6 to 5, which then supports our overall conclusion. This is not a case where 5 and 6 are convergent or linked reasons supporting the main conclusion, because to count as convergent support, both claims would need to give separate independent reasons for why we should reject efforts to ban CRT. For example, if Claim 6 said something like banning CRT violates free speech, that could function independently as a separate reason for the conclusion. But that's not what Claim 6 is doing here. Instead, it supports the idea in Claim 5 that we should acknowledge the ongoing effects of racism by appealing to a more general moral principle that comes in Claim 6, that we should strive to dismantle racism wherever and whenever it occurs. So that principle in 6 justifies that we should acknowledge rather than ban awareness. So the only claim that we haven't really talked about is up here, Claim 7. You'll notice that I didn't include it in the diagram, and that's because Claim 7 is just considered an extra claim. It adds some context as to what's been going on across the country, but that claim doesn't serve any argumentative function. It doesn't give us a reason. It's not a reason, it's not an intermediate conclusion. It's just context and only context. So that's why it's positioned off here without any arrows or any connection to any other claims supporting the main conclusion. So we can identify it, and in the diagram, we just have it out here on the side alone without any connection to anything else to indicate that it is just an extra claim. Okay, I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me through Canvas and we'll go from there.